Judiciary Committee member is joining us right now. A very crucial fellow. You know him very well, Sen Kennedy, Republican, beautiful state of Louisiana. Senator, what do you make of this, and what do you want to know about what's in this?
Number one, I would ask the Attorney General to work Sunday. He probably does anyway. After church, read the report, and let's get it released to the American people. They're entitled to know what happened. Number two, Look, FBI agents and Justice Department officials have the right to their own political beliefs, but they can't act on them. If somebody in the 2016 campaign did and tried to hurt President Trump or hurt Secretary Clinton, the American people need to know. They need to be dismissed from the Justice Department and FBI, and if necessary, they need to be prosecuted with great vengeance and furious anger. We need to get this behind us and restore the credibility of the FBI and the Justice Department. Now, if somebody didn't do anything wrong, nobody did anything wrong, then let's tell the American people. And I'm interested in having the Judiciary Committee get into this, but first I want the American people to have a chance to read the report.
All right, Andy McCabe's lawyer, and of course the former deputy FBI director, his lawyer is indicating that prosecutors should drop this probe because his client has not been indicted for lying to investigators. We really don't know the full details of that, do you?
No, but I do know this. Plenty of people are prosecuted by the FBI and Justice for lying to an FBI agent. Now, here's a case where an FBI agent lied to an FBI agent. If the Justice Department and the FBI are going to maintain any credibility, it seems to me that they have to treat everybody equally under the law. And once again, if Mr. McCabe did lie to an FBI agent, he should be prosecuted with great vengeance and furious anger. And, I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
So, Senator, when this whole investigation started, your argument has been, and other Republicans have said that, and are convinced of this, that it was started under specious circumstances, that the whole investigation of the president when he was running for president and the people around him was built on a false premise. It was built on a lie. Do you still subscribe to that?
Yes, and I hope I'm wrong. But here's my suspicion. There were a handful of men and women at Justice and the FBI who acted on their political beliefs. Now, some tried to hurt the president. I think some of them tried to hurt Secretary Clinton. Mr. Comey, I'm not alleging it, but he could have tried to hurt both. The American people need to know. The American people are smart enough to figure it out, but they've got to have the facts. Stop the speculation and the innuendo. Attorney General Barr, read that report, send it back to our Inspector General, and let the American people see it.
If I can switch to the threat of Russia and all the back and forth, which is so intrinsic in this probe, as you know, Senator, I had Jim Mattis here, as you know, he's promoting a book, the former defense secretary, who was saying, I'm still very worried about Russia. I don't call Vladimir Putin a friend. I call him a threat. I'm paraphrasing here enough to say that he'll do it again. He'll be involved, and Russia will be involved in our 2020 campaign. What do you think of that?
I trust Russia and China and Iran and North Korea like I trust a Jussie Smollett police report. You can't trust them. And they're not going to stop. They're not our friends. Since President Trump took office, they don't love us anymore. But I think, by God, they respect us now. And we've got to remain vigilant. That doesn't mean we shouldn't talk with them. The toughest job for a president is to deal with people who don't share your values, but whose interests are important to your interests. But you've got to go into it with eyes open, wide open.
All right, so when other more hardliners, I think John Bolton was among them, he's out of a job now, maybe because of this view that the president and his overtures to some of these folks was a little over the top. Now, of course, he's tossed over the side. Does that direction, does that approach the president take, which was the core of John Bolton saying, all right, I can't deal with this. Do you share any of that?
Well, look, I've never met Mr. Bolton. I've listened to him. I've watched him. I've read a portion of one of his books. Right. He has his point of view. I think he loves America. I don't know what happened in the White House. I do know this. Number one, you can't leak stuff that hurts your boss, if that is indeed what happened. Number two, I have great respect for Mr. Bolton, but presidents, any president, is entitled to surround himself with advisors of his or her choice. And those are the rules. Mr. Bolton was not the president. The president is the president, and he has the right to change horses. And he did.
And he did indeed. They will serve at the pleasure of the president, no matter who he is. All right, thank you, Senator. Very good seeing you.